Loading. Looks like we are live. Let's check. See what's going on YouTube. And waiting, and we're live. All right, we're live on YouTube. And we should be live on X and Facebook as well. Celebrating, adding some new things. We have a lot of things going on. We're upgrading. So, just a heads up first. I want to get a few administrative stuff out of the way. Okay, and then we have a lot to talk about. First of all, we are continuing to upgrade the website. So, um, there might be some occasional glitches or whatnot over the next couple of weeks. We are upgrading everything. So, just be aware of that as we work on it. We also have upgraded a lot of the toys here. We already introduced the drawing tool that we're going to be adding on, which we're going to try and use tonight. Been practicing with it, so hopefully everything works out with that. We're also going to be working on upgrading some of the sound effects because some people think it is pretty cool, so we'll make sure that works. And we're making sure everything works, so everything seems to be going well on X, honey. All right, good deal. All right, we're up and running. And look, we already have the CDM. What? Facebook is causing an issue. Oh, hold it. Here it is. It's popped up now. So, okay, good. So, another thing I want to share, just so everyone knows, it is holiday season. Yes, and because it is holiday season, I wanted to make sure everyone understands what our schedule is with updates, because there is a time every so often where I actually do take a little bit of time with myself and my wife and family, and most of that time is pretty much focused around the holidays and Christmas. So we have our live chats for tonight, obviously. Next week, and the 18th is going to be the last one of 2024, unless something unusual happens. Talk about that in a moment. And then, as far as the update schedule for December 20th through January 1st, normal updates on December 20th, 21st, and 22nd, weekend updates. 23rd through the 27th, of course, that is when I'll be forecasting for Santa Claus. I'm not going to have a lot of time, so no videos. But Santa will be bugging the hell out of me, and then I'm going to be taking a little bit of break after that. So 26th and 27th, we're also just going to have morning updates, and then 28th and 29th are weekend updates and normal updates by December 30th. So we got that out of the way, and now we have an area low pressure moving through. So we're going to talk about the Arctic cold front for tomorrow morning and why I'm concerned about these winds more so than anything else. Also, is winter canceled? People are already canceling winter. Now, I've already told people if you cancel winter, your favorite sports team will have bad luck for the next 3 decades. So hopefully, pretty much it's all everyone from Southeast Pennsylvania. So now the Phillies are screwed. So it's not my fault. You did it to yourselves. So let's talk about what is going on with our weather pattern. And first and foremost, we'll take a look at the current observations. Now, obviously, our low pressure system is tracking to the north of us, and as a result of that, we have all these southwesterly winds in place, setting up very mild conditions, right? So there was the initial support for maybe some snow, and we are already starting to see that here in northeastern Pennsylvania, possibly producing a dusting, maybe an inch, especially in your higher elevations. Down here is right now is not the snow threat. Right now is pretty much a few showers. You might see a few flakes in the air. Same thing around the Hudson River Valley. But for the most part, it is way too warm, obviously, with temperatures in the lower to mid 40s along the coastal plain for anything other than rain. The reason why that is happening is because our whole low pressure structure has two warm fronts. This is an 850 millibar warm front. We have another surface warm front way up in Canada. And what you have here is a lot of what we call isotropic lifting. So you have your Arctic cold front back here. And so, as this is all evolving, all your warm air is surging northward, and that is supporting the development of precipitation finally. Fortunately, we also have some dry air we're trying to overcome, so some locations are experiencing what we call virga, like, for example, over central New Jersey. But the main show, if you're looking for snow accumulation, or at least snow in the air, is going to be really for tomorrow morning. The only place outside of that can expect snow outside of that time period is, of course, in northeastern Pennsylvania and around the Catskills. So what's driving all this? Well, let's refresh this because this is the 850 millibar temperature scheme. And so what I want to show here is that we're getting our primary warm air transport setting up right here that is setting up our isotropic lifting, right? So that's why we're seeing the precipitation that we're seeing. My concern is what is back here, okay? See this area right here? That is some very strong winds and also some very cold air. Talking about 10 to 12, minus 10 to 12 degrees Celsius, right? So you have that type of cold air ready to drop southward here and ready to swing through our region. And it's also featuring 850 millibar winds around 50 knots or so. So when I see that getting ready to set up, moving through us, that typically introduces the potential for some wind damage here. So when we look at our setup, you can see here at 925 millibars, a little bit lower in the atmosphere, the steady warming that's occurring over us. And then here is that strong cold air transport that is already starting to intensify. Now, how do you know you have strong cold air transport and strong warm air transport? Well, it's these little tight boxes here. See, so basically what you want to do here, let me put a dot right there. Okay, so when you're looking at these boxes right here and they become tighter and tighter here, that's when you start to set up strong warm air transport and it rides along with the winds, right? Now, when you're looking for strong cold air transport, what you are looking for is very similar setup, just in the opposite direction. So back here, you have your strong cold air transport setting up. And so you can see those tight boxes here. So I'm kind of teaching you guys a little bit of Met 101, right? So you're getting a free college class tonight. Congratulations. You don't even have to pay the credits. When you see these types of boxes lined up like this and they get very tight, that tells you that you're going to have very strong cold air transport and a rapid drop in your temperatures. So that typically leads to what we call strong frontogenesis. But why aren't we seeing a major storm here? I wanted to touch on this point because there's a lot of misunderstanding of why we're not seeing a major winter storm in this cold period. And of course, my favorite term, wasted cold air. First of all, we don't have wasted cold air. Already explained why in multiple videos. When you have the potential in early December to cool the boundary layer and to cool your topsoil, from the 50s to the 30s, that's very productive cold air. Yes, you may not be able to make Frosty the Snowman, but you have to understand the whole process here. And you have to understand in early and mid December, your chance of seeing snow on the coastal plain is less than 5%. Over the interior, far greater. Why? Well, I don't know. Maybe because you're on top of a mountain. So, yeah, better chance of seeing snow in the Poconos and Catskills. When you get towards the end of December, you got a 10% chance. So, not exactly the significant increase that you look for. The reason why we have the bulk of our winter storms in January and February is because by that point, you've established the evolution of the polar vortex, the evolution of your tropical forcing, and the potential for maximizing wavelengths in the polar and subtropical jet stream. And tonight we have a great opportunity to learn in live real time why we're not seeing a winter storm in this scenario. And so when we take a look at the setup here, you can see in the polar jet stream, we have a nice trough axis right here. Actually, let me move that back a little bit. And we have a ridge axis back here. Why is this important? Well, when you have a ridge axis back this far, you don't have the correct wavelengths. And they don't line up well with what's going on in the subtropical jet stream with our trough axis back here. So when this doesn't line up very well, and you can see the other trough axis back here, all the way out here in the Atlantic, pardon me, let me fix that. Let's see, right about here. Okay. Well, you see, this doesn't allow for phasing. And so what you get is a lot of progressive troughs, a lot of cold shots of air, but you don't get the storm potential. And part of this is because the MJO is in phase 3, 4, and 5. Or it was in 3, it been 4, and now it's moved to 5, and next is 6, right? And what did I say back in mid-November? Hey, this looks like a cold pattern, but not a stormy one. Why? I don't like how this jet stream dynamic is aligned here. So anyone that was chasing phantom winter storms on the GFS and even somewhat the European, now that it's gone out to 360 hours or so, you're wasting your time because you don't understand what the forcing parameters are. You're just waiting for the next model run and get, so that way you could share it on social media and whatnot or get overexcited. What you have to understand is that when you have an MJO phase that we've been talking about in 3, 4, and 5, and 6, unless you get incredibly lucky, and then at this point you might as well go get yourself a lottery ticket, you're not going to get a winter storm because everything gets thrown out of line. So that's why we're just dealing with clippers here and not major winter storms. And if you're not sure, if you don't know where to find the MJO and all that other stuff, all you need to know is this very simple rule in this setup. And this is 24 hours out ahead of any type of storm. Anytime that you have a ridge axis out here, you're not going to get a winter storm over here. Okay? It just ain't happening. Because what you want is the ridge axis here. When the ridge axis is here, then you get the proper alignment in the polar and subtropical jet streams to set up cyclogenesis out here. Okay? So I wanted to make that very clear. Great opportunity to be able to show that in live time so that way you understand, look, it's not that I don't like snow. It's not that I want warm patterns. There's some crazy stuff out there trying to rationalize why I wasn't going for a cold and stormy pattern in early December. It's because the science says no. But again, this process was very important because it set up the ability for two things. One, stretching of the polar vortex, how that is evolving, even when the polar vortex is strong. And also, it gave us an understanding of how tropical forcing is working in this environment with a lack of La Nina. So we're learning a lot, which is really important. So in this case, we have our shortwave coming through. Pretty dynamic version here. Very impressive setup here. Positively tilted trough tells us it's a fast moving system. So again, this is another factor that when you see this type of signal with an Arctic cold front, this cold front is going to be coming through like bats out of hell, and it's going to have a significant impact on the morning rush hour tomorrow. So again, these little tiny details that you can see in the observations, you don't have to worry about, hey, what mile guide should I follow? You just look at the observations and you can tell what the themes are in this forecast. So when we're taking a look at the infrared satellite picture, we see a lot of support here for isotropic lifting increasing. This is all via the warm air transport. And back here is our cold air transport. Back here is our shortwave. You can see that very nicely here on the water vapor satellite picture. There's our dynamic shortwave diving in, getting ready to rock on through, getting ready to create strong lifting. So what type of strong lifting are we dealing with for tomorrow morning? Well, let's break down and focus on the temperatures. We don't have to look at 500 millibar PVA, although if you want to, we can later. We don't have to look at any other thing other than the thermodynamic properties involved in this setup. So right now we have our warm air transport, setting up rain snow showers, our boundary layers warming. By the time we get to 2 a.m. at 850 millibars, we're moderating at a pretty good steady rate. To the point that even at 850 millibars, again, this is via the NAM. One thing to note, you can use the NAM at this point. This is in its wheelhouse right now, and we're focusing on frontogenesis and convective factors. So when you're asking this type of question, you use this type of model. When you're trying to figure out dynamic convective precipitation involving strong frontogenesis, you really don't want to use a synoptic model, which is the GFS and European. They can, manage, but what you want to do is get the real details here and kind of get to the fine-tooth cones here. So when you look at this setup here we are by 5 a.m. Nice warming, but look at this freight train coming in. Look at this type of cold air transport that is it drops temperatures over central to western Pennsylvania from -6 to -13. It's a 6-degree drop in a very short period of time at the mid levels, which is pretty impressive. So by the time we get to 7 a.m., here comes our Arctic front, just now getting into central Pennsylvania. The leading edge is probably right about here, and you can see the cold air kind of bleeding out ahead of it, and then just runs right in during the mid and late morning hours. So just remember this process, mid to late mornings, your cold air surging in and your temperatures are crashing. So aloft, you have massive, strong cold air transport. At 9 to 25 millibars while this is all occurring, pretty warm, right? Here comes our Arctic air surging in, but we're above freezing on the coast and marginal over the interior. So this would set up rain, snow on the coast, snow over the interior, and here comes our Arctic front. And again, late morning hours, it comes through like a bat out of hell. Just drives right through. Now notice, because of the position of the upper level low at 850 millibars, again, you're getting warm air transport up here, cold air transport here. It's colder down here in southeastern Pennsylvania and central New Jersey and southern New Jersey than it is in, let's say, the Hudson River Valley, the Poconos and Catskills. This is very important when we start to consider two things: convective precipitation via flurries and snow squalls, but also the ability to mix in the atmosphere. So when we have these factors in place here, finally at the surface, you can really see the progression of this Arctic cold front. We go from our morning lows being our highs for the day, where you're going to be in the lower 40s in southern New Jersey, and that's going to be the high temperature for the day, just as you're waking up, getting ready to get out of the house. By the time you get ready for your lunch, your temperatures are crashing through the 30s, and by the time you're ready to go home, you're down to freezing. So this is going to lead to slick road conditions in the evening hours, and it's going to lead to areas of snow flurries, but it also is going to lead to pretty significant mixing. This is around the time of the Arctic cold front moving through, let's say about 8 a.m. And this is over central New Jersey, roughly around, let's say, Freehold, okay, central Monmouth County. And what I want to show here is that as that Arctic cold front moves through, look at the instability in the atmosphere. This is going to support the potential for some pretty impressive convective precipitation and also mixing of the jet stream at 850 millibars featuring 40 knot winds down to the surface. So what you end up with is, well, initially, we'll pull up 18Z on the NAM to see what this looks like. You can see the precipitation overnight tonight, rain, snow, not a lot of accumulation unless you're in the Poconos and the Catskills. And then here comes our Arctic cold front coming through. And this signal, again, you don't want to use this verbatim, but this signal here is showing here a nice mix changeover. So, what I mean by that is that this signal here is telling me that we're going to see a rapid drop in temperatures and rapid changeover from rain to snow as this Arctic cold front moves through. And then behind that, you get the potential for flurries. And then here is your lake effect signal here setting up. So why did I go with higher snowfall, 1 to 3 inches around, let's say, the Poconos and Catskills? Well, as that Arctic cold front blows through, you're going to get some lake enhancement coming in here. And that's going to be a constant issue in northeastern Pennsylvania and around central New York. This is going to produce even more snowfall. And then we're going to have to keep an eye out for any one of these snow showers to break off and drop through the New York City and Philadelphia metropolitan area, but really the New York City metro for like a rogue snow shower or snow squall. On the HRR guidance, kind of showing the same thing here. There's our precipitation overnight. Again, a lot of this here, a lot of this signal. Yeah, you might have snow in the air, because your 850 millibar temperatures are cold enough. But remember, your surface temperatures, when you go back and take a look at that, your surface temperatures are in the 40s. So okay, we cool down a little bit, let's say um, in the upper 30s, but in reality, a lot of this is not going to accumulate. Then here comes our Arctic cold front, and here again is my concern here is that you have this signal here of a lot of convective precipitation. So what this typically tells me is that, hey, this is going to be a setup here during the morning rush hour when you're going to have heavy precipitation going from heavy rain to heavy snow. So if you're traveling tomorrow morning, give yourself some extra time, maybe take some mass transit, and just be prepared for a rapid changeover from rain to snow and your temperatures as you're heading in crashing through the 40s into the 30s, and by the time you leave, below freezing. And while all that is happening, all that mixing is happening, these strong winds at 850 millibars are going to set up the potential for strong wind gusts. So the concern here, as we move on through the afternoon hours, with the cold air coming in, creating significant instability and mixing, you're going to get sustained winds of 10 to 20 miles per hour, but these gusts will easily push over 30 miles per hour, could touch as high as 50 miles per hour over portions of southeastern Pennsylvania, Philadelphia Metro, southern New Jersey, central New Jersey. Why are the winds only expected to be somewhere between 20 to 30 miles per hour? As far as the gusts further north, well, the 850 millibar winds are a little bit weaker, and the cold air aloft is slightly warmer during this time period, so the instability and mixing is not as impressive. And so the forecasted wind gusts here are pretty strong. Again, forecasted wind gusts 30 to 40 miles per hour. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a rogue 50-mile-per-hour wind gust. We get enough mixing, possibly, let's say, around the Delaware Bay. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a 60-mile-per-hour wind gust out of this. So it's going to be pretty windy, chilly, and snow showers. So again, I'm not expecting a major snowfall out of this, but why did I put an impact map out? Well, look, people haven't been driving in this type of weather in quite some time. Some people can be nutty. It's good to give some people a good idea of, hey, what to expect. The main event really for most of the region is this Arctic cold front moving through tomorrow morning that could put down a dusting to maybe even an inch in a few locations, mostly on cold surfaces. But beware of those wind gusts because they're going to be awfully nasty tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening. I might just grab an umbrella and fly into wherever I need to go because it's going to be that windy out there. So just be prepared for that. So that's the deal for our Arctic cold front. Is this it? Is this winter? Are we done? Does this mean we won't see any more potential for cold air moving forward? Ladies and gentlemen, anyone that's telling you that isn't paying attention. Winter is not ending just before it started. We're not going to be dealing with prolonged warm conditions. Winter has just begun. So, why do I say that? Well, let's take a look at the overall factors that I've been talking about since, I don't know, September. ENSO is more La Nada than La Nina. And the MJO, well, it's either going to be trying to rush into phase 7 or it's going to kind of inch its way in. Now, I kind of lean more on the European here, no big surprise there, because what's happening in terms of the MJO, in terms of the trade winds, matches more with the European look than it does with the GFS look. But either way that you slice it, you have a setup here where the MJO, by the time we move towards 2025, early January, we will be moving into phase 7 and inching towards phase 8. Now, how strong it is, that's still a question. I'm leaning more weak than strong, but it's getting away from this signal here. And that's shown on all the model guidance. It's just a matter of how strong. How does that look graphically? Okay, so this is a different way of looking at it. Again, this is our date line. And what we're seeing here is our forcing with the subtropical jet stream is shifting from basically the Philippines more towards the date line. And our weak, cold, neutral signal, if you want to try to push this towards a La Nina state, which I wouldn't do so, but I know there's some people who want to make adjustments via global warming and call it a La Nina state, fine, whatever. At the end of the day, what matters is forcing mechanisms, okay? You can call it whatever you want. You can call it the Big Zamboni. I don't care. The important factor here is what are the forcing mechanisms? And the forcing mechanisms tell me more convection towards the date line, setting up in January and February. Interesting. Now, why am I not gung-ho about this La Nina taking hold? Or calling it La Nina? Now, certainly it looks chilly enough, but the average, which is what matters, is still cold neutral at most. Not exactly impressive. But let's just say that next week, Nino 3.4 comes in as minus 0.5 degrees Celsius. Let's just go with that, right? Just for a second. It's not, but let's just make that assumption. What you want to do when you're looking at this and looking at the longevity and the potential for an ENSO event to either stick around, intensify, or fade away is what's going on below it. And the upper ocean heat anomalies here are moderating rapidly, very rapidly. I mean, when you see this signal, you do not say strengthening La Nina, you're saying this is about to fade. Now, when you have this signal here, then you can say, hey, strengthening La Nina. Heck, if you even went with this signal back here, hey, you could just say stabilized. But when you start to see these warming signals here, and you start to see the cold pools, okay, in the below the surface here fade away, and now you're starting to see some warm pools showing up here. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be betting La Nina. I mean, that's just me. I don't know. What do I know? I'm just a meteorologist. But, you know, This does not tell me strengthening La Nina. This tells me what you got now is pretty much it. And what we got now is a very weak SOI signal and a tropical forcing regime driven by the MJO. And I don't think that's changing anytime soon. So that aspect of the winter forecast has been working out pretty nicely. And it's lined up pretty nicely with what I thought was going to occur in December. But why are we going warm? What's going on? Is winter canceled? No. It is the natural process of what we'd expect with this polar vortex. Again, we are still in a westerly QBO. We are seeing weakening of the QBO, but with the westerly QBO, we know we're going to be dealing with a strong polar vortex, which is why I warned from the very beginning that this whole winter is going to be all about transient polar and Arctic air masses. Every time the polar vortex stretches, we get punched. Every time it contracts, we get a rest period. That is what our winter is going to be. Unless you get a massive change, a massive disruption, which I'm not expecting, but if we get that, then hey, game on, sustain cold all the way through January and February. But I don't see any signal for that. But I am seeing a signal of a weakening QBO state. How do I know that? Well, again, we're looking at the CPC data here, and you can see the trend. This is about 15 meters per second. So if it gets into these levels up here, say 20, 30, 40 knots, not knots, meters per second, then that's a strong QBO signal. Again, strong QBO signal here on the negative side too. You don't want to see that either. So you want to stay away from strong, okay, much like our tropical forcing mechanisms. So what you want to do is trend more towards weak. So originally, as we were moving through the fall, we were around 15 to 17, and that continued until about mid-November. So that skewed our QBO number for November to around 13 or so. It most likely, based on raw numbers, peaked in mid November around 16 meters per second. It has dropped 3 meters per second from mid November to Thanksgiving. That's pretty aggressive. And now we continue to see weakening. And the key thing is here, okay? When we change our QBO state, the changing of the state drops from the top of the stratosphere to the bottom of the stratosphere. Now, you might be saying, Stephen, why the hell do I care about the winds at meters per second, by the way, which seems awfully small in the stratosphere? Well, when you have a weakening QBO state like we're seeing here, and you're seeing signals of the QBO state weakening below 10 meters per second as we move through the winter, that means that the support for the polar vortex to remain strong is disappearing, which means you can more frequently disrupt and stretch your polar vortex. Again, we're not looking at any models here. This is all observations. This is all is. This is what is, not what could be, not what might be, not what the GFS is showing. This is what is. So this is what we're working with. The other thing that we're working with is a signal here, and this is where we are going into model guidance, and this is showing up on the European and the GFS. First, we get our cold state. So our polar vortex is consolidating, thus mild, thus warm. So that's why we're going warm. That makes the most sense. Your polar vortex is tightening up, much like a ballerina or an ice skater when she does that spinning twirl thing, right? And she pulls her arms in, pulling all the polar and Arctic air masses back towards northern Canada. Then, well, look at that. Boom. Here comes the warming. Stratospheric warming takes hold. And that, ladies and gentlemen, this signal right here is your first sign of another major stretching event setting up to influence our weather pattern by the very end of December, let's say after December 26th, but more likely early January. So let's just think about this here. Okay. Early January, we're moving the MJO from phase 7 and 8. Interesting. We're starting to see stratospheric warming. We'll know if this is trustworthy by December 19th in terms of seeing the warming take place. But both model guides and ensembles are showing this. And then I'm keeping an eye on the zonal winds here at 10 millibars on the European, taking from the strong state, very strong state, to near to slightly below normal. Now, again, I'm not expecting a reversal in the wind. I'm not expecting the polar vortex to collapse. But this signal here tells me you'll have more stretching. So when you have more stretching, well, first, you end up with the stretching, redeveloping, reshifting towards the Arctic Circle. Again, mild pattern makes a lot of sense after December 10th, going all the way to roughly around December 25th, 26th. Then we start to see the stretching take place after the 20th of December, and you're getting this signal. Now, again, there's always a lag time. It's not one to one, but if you get this signal around this point, then you start to set up an environment where you're getting more disruptions and a stronger ridge setting up around Alaska and polar and Arctic air surging in. Now, how it surges in, whether it hits the Rockies and work east or dive into the plains and work east, those are all details that we have to wait and see. How the subtropical jet stream interacts, it will interact if it moves into phase 7 and 8. But the details of whether it ends up with snow in your background, in your backyard, I don't know. No one knows. But in this setup here, it certainly makes things very interesting as we move forward towards the end of the month. But if you're looking for a white Christmas, once again, as I tell you guys, if you want to see a white Christmas, you either go to the upper Midwest or just watch movies. Yeah, that's it. Or go to the Eastern Great Lakes. They got more than enough snow, but it's most likely not going to be happening for the Northern Mid Atlantic. Now, one thing that I'm going to be keeping an eye on in the model guidance is what does this feature do after December 20th? Because if this drops southward, like the stratospheric polar vortex evolution suggesting, it's going to get very interesting for me to follow exactly what's going on with these short waves. Couple other points I want to just add in here. We got our ensemble guidance here showing up very nicely, setting up. But I wanted to touch on this signal here because a lot of people already asked me about it. I am very skeptical of this. And the reason why I'm skeptical of this, and actually I think the GFS might actually have a better idea on this, but we'll see. But the reason why you want to be skeptical of this is that in, again, a slightly unfavorable phase, you really want to be careful with the interaction and timing of these short waves. And so in this case, the timing is perfect. And when you're dealing with a contracting polar vortex and changes in the atmosphere, like what we were just talking about, you really want to stay away or trust the idea of a perfect phase at a perfect time, perfect interaction, thread the needles type scenario. Most likely you end up with more of an interior track. So I do like the idea of some sort of storm setting up around the end of next week, 12th to the 13th. I like it, but I'm going warm for now. If I see this signal showing up again the next couple of runs, yeah, then I'll take it with a little bit less grain of salt. But I really don't trust a solution where you just got the timing perfect here, literally perfect, right? Whereas just in the previous guidance, it wasn't so perfect. The shortwave in the subtropical jet stream was much faster, your cold air lagged behind, and so you ended up with rain with your primary low up here. Whereas the 12Z guidance, everything worked just right, just at the right time. And so your primary low was on the coast rather than over the interior. Call me skeptical. I want to wait a bit before I trust this. Because again, the guidance before that, we take a look at that, was, well, nowhere near as impressive. Your primary low was back north, and what you ended up with was a cold front. So we'll see how that plays out. Well, I've done plenty of talking. Now it's time to see what you have to ask. So, of course, as always, we'll take a look at all of the premium questions first because, hey, they're premium members, they're special. And then we'll check out the social media. So, let's see here. And hello, everyone over there. Right now, at least there is a nice cross polar flow from Siberia to North America. Yes, and that's going to continue, I think. That's one thing that really has caught my eye for this winter, and why I was saying, even on social media, hey, this looks like more of a colder version of what I thought this winter was going to be. Not that it was going to be cold and snowy. I wasn't saying that, but a colder version, a better potential of seeing more of these polar and Arctic air masses. Still like the idea of transient. Until we get a sustained polar vortex permanently stretched into North America, I have to go transient. Only 3 weeks only 3 weeks to Christmas Day. I know it's insane, absolutely insane. 23ZHRR has a nice burst of snow over northeast New Jersey, New York City from 5 to 7Z. Yep. I was looking at that. I don't like the boundary layer temperatures at that time, so probably snow in the air, not actually accumulating. You're talking about 40s, so it's going to take a little bit of time for it to accumulate. Will flash freeze be a problem? For most locations, no, because of the strong winds. It's going to really dry everything out. Wind chills are going to be a pain in the ass, though. Todd asks, why does it seem that we haven't gotten a good old Alberta Clipper in recent memory in our area? First of all, not the right season for it just yet. But the reason why is because of the evolution of the polar jet stream and the alignment that we've been dealing with, that these Alberta Clippers either have been focused more towards New England or have been suppressed well to our south. Just a lot of bad luck, to be honest with you. Let's see here. Amazing how polar and Arctic air can cool down the Atlantic off the eastern seaboard. Important if we're going to see snowstorms in January and February. Absolutely. On Discord, this is from Boss. On Discord, you said you can make an argument for cold white and very warm wet. You gave us the argument for cold white. What is the counter argument you allude to for warm and wet? Great question. If that polar vortex, and more importantly, that stratospheric warming doesn't take place, then the polar vortex doesn't get disrupted, and what you end up with is a very progressive polar jet stream that basically cuts across the United States, and you get more of a focus towards Siberia and Europe for a lot of your cold weather. So that's why I said the stratospheric warming event around the 19th. It's not going to be a pure stratospheric warming event, but it's going to set up the environment to cause the stretching in the polar vortex. If that doesn't happen, then you keep the cold air bottled up. So that's why I could see argument for both. Because if that doesn't happen and you have muted tropical forcing, then what you end up with is a polar jet stream that just runs from the Pacific Northwest to New England, and we just end up with these cold fronts that swing on through with maybe a day or two of cold air, and it moderates with Pacific air masses again. So that's why that process is very important. Love the drawing tool in several discussions this week. You have mentioned TNH. What is that? It's just a combination of parameters to measure the nature of the pattern in North America. It gives me, when I have a positive TNH, the Pacific is more favorable for allowing cold air to invade. When I have a negative TNH, it lines up better with a strong jet stream to shoot across the Pacific and drive through the United States. So, for example, last what was it? Was it mid-December? Mid-December to early January, we had a negative TNH that just allowed that jet stream to just rip across the Pacific, which led to mild conditions. Admittedly, I thought that that jet stream was going to back off a little faster. It took an extra week than I thought, but eventually we did see our cold weather pattern, as you know, with some snowfall. Let's see what we got here on YouTube land. Interesting. Let's see here. Winter didn't even start yet. That's true. But, some people just like to cancel stuff. I don't know. Let's see. Answered that for December. We are so screwed. No, we're fine. We're fine as long as we have each other. It will be another disappointing winter. Well, it depends, Scott, on what your expectations are. Here's the thing here. Some of you kids, and I can say kids because I'm in my mid 40s, so everyone's kids to me now, okay? Some of you kids were spoiled because of 2010 and 2011 and all that stuff. We don't normally see 75 inches of snow around here, but that's what you guys experienced. So, what we had last year is more typical of a mid Atlantic winter. All right, let's just be honest, right? It was only slightly below normal. And some of you were very disappointed. That's kind of par for the course. That year where we had no snow, well, look, that is disappointing. But you gotta adjust your expectations just a tad, just a tad. Embrace and enjoy when you get those type of winters where you're talking about 70, 75 inches of snow. They're a beautiful thing as long as you don't have to shovel them. Let's see here. Uh, Do these polar pockets of air of Arctic blasts necessarily guarantee a major snowfall event, or is a strong trough required as well? Um, okay, so it's kind of like you need a polar Arctic air mass, mostly a polar air mass, to get your snow. But just because you have a polar air mass does not guarantee that you will get a winter storm because you have to align the subtropical jet stream and the short waves, and they all have to play nice, which is why having a winter storm here is actually far more difficult than you think because everything has to align just right to set it up. Da, da, da. What is the possibility of snow squalls affecting Cape May? Cape May is a little bit too far south. It's more like possibly a rain squall. You might see some flurries later on. But I would say more like towards Ocean, Monmouth, Cumberland, and then points northward. January usually starts winter weather. That's very true. Our winter storm seasons is really January and February. December, I always call it bonus snow. Let's see here. What was so different about 2013 and that huge snowstorm? Perfect timing. That's it. Timing. Timing of the blocking parameters. The overall theme of the pattern wasn't all that impressive. Let's see here. So snowball axis. So if we miss the Stratospheric 1 PV stretching event in December and beginning of January, if that it, the PV stays strong the rest of the winter. No, I wouldn't say that'd be it because we are also seeing the weakening of the QBO in the observations. So you'd have other shots, but it would be delayed. And then the more you delay it, the more it becomes more of a difficult snow accumulation, boundary issues, all that stuff. So mid-December and that event starting, not completing, but starting, is really important to me because that really kind of tells me the story that we're going to be lining up for late December, January, and February. Any chance of ocean affects snow? For northern Long Island, I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised if we see some ocean effect snow off of the Long Island Sound. Uh, Maybe tomorrow night, definitely Friday. Saturday, not so much. The cold air transport won't be as strong. Why has the Miller A storm been almost impossible? Because we really haven't had a weak El Nino lined up with strong polar vortex interruption. The closest we had was last year when we were seeing all that support for very strong high latitude blocking, but it just didn't come together. So what you need is a robust subtropical jet stream and a real good polar or Arctic air mass diving down the Mississippi River Valley and then clashing with the Gulf of Mexico. Then you're going to get a real nasty Miller A. But we really haven't been dealing with that. I speak for everyone. We are not greedy for 75 inches of snow. Just 2 or 3 storms, 3 inches plus would suffice. Do we have any questions on X or anywhere else?
Somebody on X said that they would like a white Christmas.
Sorry, dude.
Somebody on Facebook pointed out the snow on Halloween in 2010, which we're well aware of.
Yes.
One time we went to a Halloween party.
Yes. The one time it was one of our dates. It was lovely. We dressed up. We're all excited. This is when I just got an well, not an iPhone, but I think I had a flip phone or something. So I was trying to, do forecast updates and stuff. Real old technology. And I'm thinking like, it's Halloween. We'll get a little bit of rain, snow, but it won't be that bad. But no, the upper level low intensifies right over New Jersey, and we end up with snow. And I was pissed. I was like, what is this? This wasn't in my, so it was a busted forecast and screwed up our date. But we still had fun, right?
When that came through.
Oh,
It's the same person.
a white Christmas would be great.
Under
Oh, what time would that be tomorrow? Oh, the Arctic cold front's moving through during the rush hour tomorrow, morning rush hour. So I'd say from west to east, go from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., just the cold front marching through. And then after that, very strong winds the rest of the day. The afternoon and the evening rush hour will feature rogue snow showers, flurries, but also very strong wind gusts. All right, we've had some pretty good questions today. Wow, and YouTube's just off the hook. Let's see what we got. Let's see if we got any good questions. Da, 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 da. Let's see. Warm water temperatures and how will that affect the Northeast? Well, this is why the cold air transport is so important that we're seeing right now. You don't want 60-degree temperature water or 50s because basically what happens is every time you get an easterly component, you're going to just drive the coastal front in and you're going to end up with snow changing over to rain along the coast very easily. So the more you cool it down, which is why I typically look for winter storms in January and February. Why? Because by then you're talking about water temperatures in the mid to upper 40s. And then you get your cold air mass. The cold air mass can overcome that warming influence, and that's how you get your winter storms. If we didn't get this type of Arctic air, forget about it. We're shot. Okay? Uh, let's see. Does a 40-70 benchmark even matter anymore? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When you get a storm tracking 40-70, 40 north, 70 west, what that basically aligns to is that it sets up a low pressure system where you have consistent northeasterly winds on the coastal plain and over the interior, which allows your cold air to get locked in and allows for everyone to get snow. So if you want an all snow event, one of the key factors, along with the nature of the air masses you're dealing with, is the storm track. And so if you have a storm track going, let's say, from the Delmarva Peninsula to 40 north, 70 west, you're setting up a perfect scenario to keep that cold air locked in. Can the MJO cancel out a negative EPO? The MJO drives the evolution of one of the factors that drives the evolution of the EPO, along with other factors. So the EPO is just a statistical analysis of where the 500 millibar pattern is The MJO is a forcing mechanism. So a lot of people, when they say, oh, well, the negative EPO is causing, no, negative EPO doesn't cause anything. It's just a signal that we use mathematically to understand the weather pattern that we're in. Forcing mechanisms are the polar vortex, the MJO, ENSO, um, mountain torque, AAM, stuff like that. When will the cold return? Well, like I said, most likely after Christmas. True, like cold air. Well, we're not looking at a torch here either, by the way. We warm up a couple of days. You might get a day in the 50s, maybe even touching 60. And then you get knocked back down into the 40s. Seasonable. So I don't see like a major, warm phase and temperatures in the 50s and 60s and 70s and all that nonsense. Nah, no, it's seasonable. We're just not going to see any winter storms. Um, why? Why would it only last 1 week? Well, actually, it lasts 2 weeks. Um, and the warm week maybe 2 weeks. So 2 weeks apiece. And again, it's all connected to the polar vortex. And let's see what we got here. Oh, wow, we're almost at 9 p.m. Do we have any questions on X? Any more? Facebook, well, see, Facebook gives everyone a hard time because it's run by an alien. Let's see. Nope. Okay. Well, it looks like I'm going to check the community chat room for premium members, of course. If you're interested in becoming a premium member or a really cool holiday gift, Hanukkah, Christmas, whatever you might be celebrating, only $15 a month. So definitely check that out. And it's a nice monthly subscription. So definitely check that out. Um, let's see. It looks like all the questions in the premium side have been answered. Well, it's been fun. It's time to close it down so I can get some sleep. And I'm going to chill the rest of the night and drink some water, save my voice. No coughing. Look at that. Made it through, no coughing. Beautiful. Yay. I'm going to celebrate. With that, thank you as always for following, watching. Please let everyone else know, let your friends and family know where you find the best weather information. A little bit of fun while we're at it. And yes, it is true. I have also been keeping an eye on X to see if the Mets have signed Soto yet. Maybe. I don't know. But in the meantime, as always, stay safe out there.